Mercedes may have just lost control of its own team, live in front of the entire Formula One world. George Russell was leading the Canadian Grand Prix. The car looked unstoppable. The championship fight was finally exploding into life. Then suddenly, complete blackout. Russell's Mercedes shut down at full speed. No electronics. No braking support. No warning. And while Russell stood helpless on the side of the track, one person benefited more than anyone else. His own teammate. Kimi Antonelli inherited the lead, won his 5th consecutive race, and extended the championship gap to a brutal 43 points. But this is where the story becomes explosive. Because Canada did not look like a normal teammate battle anymore. It looked personal. For lead changes. Aggressive defending. Frustrated radio messages. At one point, Antonelli even complained that Russell was using the entire track to stop him from passing. And throughout the race, cameras kept showing Toto Wolff staring nervously at the telemetry screens while both drivers pushed each other to the absolute limit. Then came the moment that may have changed Mercedes forever. Russell later admitted the car was already making strange noises before everything died completely. Now insiders believe the issue may be connected to the exact electrical systems Mercedes has been pushing harder than anyone else under the new 2026 regulations. And suddenly, the pressure inside Mercedes is exploding from every direction at once. A possible reliability crisis. A growing championship war. And two drivers who no longer seem willing to back down from each other. Because after Canada, something became terrifyingly clear. Mercedes does not have a rival problem anymore. It has an internal war. From the very first lap in Canada, something inside Mercedes felt different. Not faster. More dangerous. Because this was no longer two teammates calmly fighting for points. This looked like two drivers trying to prove who truly owns the future of Mercedes. And honestly, George Russell drove like a man who understood exactly what was at stake. Coming into Montreal, the momentum inside the team had completely shifted toward Kimi Antonelli. 4 consecutive victories. Massive confidence. Growing talk inside the paddock that Mercedes may have already found its next world champion. That kind of pressure changes a driver mentally. Especially someone like Russell. Because for the first time since joining Mercedes, he was no longer being viewed as the long-term center of the project. Antonelli was becoming the story. But Canada gave Russell the perfect chance to fight back. And at first, he looked unstoppable. Pole position in the sprint. Sprint victory. Then another pole for the Grand Prix itself. Everything about his driving felt aggressive, precise, and emotionally charged. Even the start of the race showed it immediately. Mercedes had quietly worked on fixing their launch problems after weak starts earlier in the season, and in Montreal the improvement was obvious. Russell exploded off the line perfectly. Antonelli followed behind him into the first corner. And within only a few laps, both Mercedes cars started disappearing into the distance. That should have been the perfect scenario for the team. A comfortable 1-2. Maximum points. Total control. Instead, the atmosphere inside the garage became more tense with every lap. Because Russell and Antonelli were not managing the race. They were attacking each other relentlessly. Antonelli used DRS repeatedly trying to break through on the straights. Russell defended aggressively into the chicanes, pushing right to the limit of what the regulations allowed. The lead changed multiple times. And every overtake felt personal. At one point, Antonelli complained over the radio that Russell was using the full width of the track and leaving him no room. That radio message became incredibly important later. Because it exposed something Mercedes had been trying to hide all season. The relationship between both drivers was becoming increasingly tense. Not publicly. Internally. And Toto Wolff looked fully aware of it. The television cameras kept showing him staring silently at the telemetry screens while the battle intensified. No celebration. No excitement. Just tension. Because dominant Formula One teams fear one thing more than rival teams. Internal conflict. History has already shown how dangerous that can become. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber. Once teammates stop seeing each other as partners, every race weekend slowly becomes psychological warfare. And Canada suddenly felt like Mercedes entering that territory. Especially because the stakes were now enormous. If Russell won, the championship fight stayed alive. If Antonelli won again, his control over the season would become massive. And underneath all of that pressure sat another dangerous problem Mercedes did not fully understand yet. The car itself. Because while both drivers fought at qualifying intensity every lap, the electrical systems inside the W17 were operating under extreme stress. The new 2026 regulations dramatically increased the power demands on the hybrid systems. More deployment. More heat. More electrical load. And Mercedes had pushed those systems harder than almost anyone else this season. The upgrades brought to Canada worked brilliantly. Better launches, better balance, faster corner exits. But sometimes in Formula One, the fastest solution also becomes the most dangerous one. Because while the battle between Russell and Antonelli intensified, the strain on the car kept increasing lap after lap. And then came the detail that now changes the entire story after the race. Russell later admitted he had already heard strange noises from the car before the catastrophic shutdown happened. At the time, he ignored them. Drivers always do. But now, those noises feel like the first warning sign before everything inside Mercedes started breaking apart. Lap 30 changed everything inside Mercedes. Not just the race. The entire emotional balance of the team. Because up until that moment, George Russell looked completely in control. He had survived every attack from Antonelli. He was managing the pace, managing the tires, managing the pressure. And maybe most importantly, he was finally proving he could still beat the driver everyone inside Formula One suddenly viewed as Mercedes' future. Then, entering turn 9, the car died. Instantly. No gradual warning lights. No dramatic smoke. Just complete electrical shutdown. Russell later described the moment with almost disbelief. Everything just switched off. No electronics. No regenerative braking. No hybrid deployment. Nothing. Imagine sprinting full speed on ice and suddenly losing every bit of balance underneath you. That is basically what a Formula One driver experiences when modern systems disappear unexpectedly. And the terrifying part is that Russell already suspected something was wrong before the blackout happened. After the race, he admitted hearing strange noises coming from the car during the battle with Antonelli. That single detail changed the entire conversation after Canada. Because now the retirement no longer looked random. Now it looked like a warning sign Mercedes may not have fully understood in time. And inside the paddock, attention immediately shifted toward the exact area Mercedes had been pushing hardest all season. The electrical systems. The new 2026 regulations transformed Formula One into a far more hybrid-dependent championship. The MGUK system now produces nearly 3 times more electrical power than previous generations. 3 times more stress. 3 times more heat. 3 times more risk. And according to reports after the race, Mercedes suspects the issue may have originated in the inverter connected to that system. Now for casual fans, the inverter sounds invisible. But inside Formula One, it is one of the most important components on the entire car. Think of it like the central nervous system for the hybrid power. If it fails, the entire car suddenly loses its ability to properly distribute electrical energy. Which perfectly explains Russell's total blackout. And this is where the pressure inside Mercedes became enormous. Because while engineers were trying to understand the failure, the race itself continued. Antonelli inherited the lead immediately. And suddenly, the emotional contrast inside the garage became brutal. On one side of the team, mechanics were dealing with shock and frustration around Russell's retirement. On the other side, Antonelli was driving toward a 5th consecutive victory. That split atmosphere is incredibly dangerous inside Formula One. Because success does not always unite a team. Sometimes it divides it even more. Especially when one driver feels the championship is slipping away through no fault of his own. And George Russell sounded emotionally broken after the race. He openly admitted he felt like the championship now belonged to Antonelli unless something dramatic happened later in the season. That statement matters more than people realize. Because drivers rarely speak with that level of resignation unless frustration has already started building internally. And at the same time, Antonelli sounded completely transformed emotionally. After crossing the finish line, his radio message said everything. Kimi Antonelli, world champion. Not hopeful. Not nervous. Confident. That confidence changes the power structure inside teams very quickly. Because Formula One naturally gravitates toward momentum. Toward the driver delivering victories consistently. Toward the future. And after Canada, Antonelli suddenly feels like the center of Mercedes. That creates another hidden problem. What happens if Russell starts feeling the team emotionally shifting away from him? That is when teammate rivalries become political. Every strategy call feels personal. Every setup decision becomes suspicious. Every reliability issue creates doubt. And now, with the FIA investigating the mechanical failure and rival teams already asking questions about Mercedes' aggressive power systems, the pressure is exploding from every direction at once. Externally, Mercedes still looks dominant. Internally, the situation suddenly feels fragile. Because once trust begins cracking inside a Formula One garage, even the fastest car in the world can stop feeling stable. And this is the moment where Mercedes may have entered the most dangerous phase possible for a dominant Formula One team. Because now, the problem is no longer just mechanical. It is emotional, political, psychological. Canada exposed something that had been building quietly for weeks. The garage is no longer emotionally united behind both drivers equally. And that changes everything moving forward. Think about how quickly the atmosphere shifted in only a few hours. Before the race, Russell looked reborn. Fastest all weekend. Leading the Grand Prix. Fighting like a driver trying to reclaim his position inside the team. Then suddenly, one catastrophic failure changed the entire championship picture. Antonelli left Canada with 5 consecutive victories and a massive 43-point advantage. Russell left Canada asking himself whether the championship was already slipping away beyond his control. That emotional contrast is explosive inside Formula One. Because teammates can survive rivalry. What they cannot survive easily is imbalance. And after Canada, the balance inside Mercedes suddenly feels gone. Antonelli now carries momentum, confidence, and the emotional energy of a future world champion. Russell carries frustration, anger, and growing distrust in the reliability of the car itself. And Formula One drivers never fully forget when a car betrays them during a title fight. Especially not at a moment this important. Remember, Russell was not simply running second or third when the failure happened. He was leading. He had finally managed to contain Antonelli directly on pure pace. And then the car disappeared underneath him. That kind of moment changes how drivers think. Because now, every strange sound becomes suspicious. Every vibration creates doubt. Every aggressive setup choice starts feeling risky. And the terrifying part for Mercedes is that the FIA investigation is only increasing that pressure. Because while the team tries to stabilize emotions internally, the governing body is now reviewing the exact systems Mercedes relied on to dominate the season. The MGUK system, the inverter, the energy deployment loads. And rival teams are watching everything closely. That creates another hidden layer of tension. Mercedes may now be forced to choose between 2 dangerous options. Continue pushing aggressively and risk another catastrophic failure. Or reduce performance slightly to protect reliability and avoid more scrutiny. Neither option feels safe. Because if Mercedes becomes more conservative technically, the advantage over Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren immediately shrinks. And if the advantage shrinks, the pressure between Russell and Antonelli becomes even worse. Why? Because dominant cars hide internal tension. The moment performance drops, teammate wars usually explode publicly. Every overtake becomes controversial. Every strategy call becomes emotional. Every radio message sounds sharper. Canada already gave signs of that future. Antonelli complaining about Russell's defending. Russell refusing to back down aggressively. Toto Wolff frozen on the pit wall while both drivers fought harder and harder. Those moments no longer feel isolated now. They feel connected. Like the first visible cracks before something much bigger. And history shows exactly how dangerous this situation can become. Formula One has seen dominant teams destroy themselves internally before. McLaren with Senna and Prost. Mercedes with Hamilton and Rosberg. At first, the tension stays hidden. Then frustration builds quietly underneath the surface. Eventually, every race becomes personal. And the scariest part for Mercedes is that Russell's mindset may now become completely unpredictable. After the race, he openly admitted the pressure was gone and that he now has nothing left to lose. That sentence should terrify the entire grid. Because a driver with nothing to lose becomes extremely dangerous. Especially inside the same team. Meanwhile, Antonelli is entering the next races with total belief. Not hope. Belief. And once a young driver reaches that emotional state while driving the fastest car in Formula One, controlling the internal dynamic becomes incredibly difficult. Because now Antonelli is no longer simply winning races. He is becoming the emotional center of Mercedes. The future face of the project. The driver everyone expects to lead the next era. And if Russell starts feeling isolated inside that environment after Canada, the internal war people are whispering about in the paddock could become impossible to contain. Which creates the biggest irony of the entire situation. Mercedes may still have the fastest car in Formula One. But after Canada, speed no longer feels like their biggest concern. Trust does.